America, a country where freedom was every man's birthright, where a man answered to his conscience, not a royal oath. But over the years, we've traded away that freedom, one war and one government promise at a time. This is the Destroyercon show. If you felt that loss, if you noticed that the country is changing into something more controlled and bitter, then you already know why we're here. If you like what we say, please subscribe and share the show. Let's return to a nation conceived in liberty. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Destroyercon show. This is Liam and Keller, aka me, Destroyercon, and my friend Keller Williams, here again to destroy the mainstream consensus. Thank you for joining all of us. Today's, it's pretty big news week. A lot of topics that we talked about last week are coming back into view. Especially with the release of the Epstein files, or at least the supposed release. We seem not to really know what's coming out or when, but Thomas Massie really stuck it to them and got this major political win. So without trying to get on too far, what's your take so far, Keller, on the Epstein files?
I think it's very interesting. Is the emails are part of some of the stuff that's been releasing? Is from what I'm understanding.
My understanding is no. Well,
it's a completely
some
separate thing.
No, some of them are. There's been some that have leaked already, like the ones that are like Bubba Trump or whatever. Those, I mean, I guess they're my understanding, those are from the brother. Like, the brother released some of emails he had in correlation with Epstein. But this is what the federal government actually has on their books. So it's not the exact same thing. Those were rumors that, came out before the release. What happened is that Massie really just put so much pressure on them that they finally caved in. Trump backed the motion to in the Epstein, to release the Epstein files, and here we are now. So it's not exactly that. What has been interesting, though, has been essentially how the new release of these Epstein files, right? We found out a lot from the release. A lot of this has been in relation to Israel. As Massie said, they got tired of him winning, so there's just a lot of moving pieces about all of this. But really, the main thing that we've seen so far since the release has been the connection between Jeffrey Epstein and Mossad. So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think haven't we been saying this for a rather long time?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny. It feels like something that, if you were in the know at all, we've been saying this.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just not surprised. Not surprised at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the one report is that an Israeli spy stayed at his penthouse in Manhattan, essentially top aide of Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, regularly stayed at his apartment, which is not surprising. We know Ehud Barak in the past had done stuff like this. There was also the story, this was a really rather interesting one that kind of went under the radar, was this story I saw about Cote d'Ivoire, where Cote d'Ivoire reports that Jeffrey Epstein worked with the Israelis to essentially coup their government and instate this dictator. So, and then, of course, Epstein had been working with the Russians. This is actually not as surprising. His, I guess it's not really father-in-law, but the father of his girlfriend, longtime girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, had been used in the past as an avenue to get in connection with the Soviets. So it's not really that surprising that in some ways, after the father died, Epstein kept that connection, and he had been working with the Israelis to get in touch with the Russian government on a number of occasions as well. So basically showing that he is most certainly an Israeli intelligence asset. And I think, as Massey's kind of alluded to, and other people have alluded to, that seems to be where all points point towards, is that he has the Mossad connection, the intelligence connection, the CIA connection, and that's what they're covering. That's what they're covering for more than anything else.
Yeah, I can see that. Though it's kind of been there. It's been in front of our face, but to finally get some kind of form of confirmation, it's really good. It's really bad, but hey, not surprising, you know. Oh,
well, and it makes you wonder what's Ben Shapiro have to say after lying to people for so long about this. But I really do just say again, so much credit to Thomas Massie on this whole issue. I mean, as he said, that he just was quoted when they were interviewing him saying that President Trump got tired of him winning. And I think that's absolutely true. I think he just got to the point there's going to be a vote on it. I think there's more infighting amongst Republicans than Trump had expected. I think there's more infighting amongst Republican members of Congress than he had expected. I don't think he expected Marjorie Taylor Greene to become public enemy number one over this. And I think he thought he could get it just kind of swept under the carpet, that with everything going on, they could easily just kind of forget this story. But the reality is that it has not been forgotten, and it has only gotten worse for the administration. It's only gotten worse for Speaker Johnson. And now we're at a point where only one person in the entirety of Congress voted against the Epstein files. Now, the question is, if you're the only one member of Congress that voted against the Epstein files, does that increase your likelihood that you were in the Epstein files, or are you just naive?
that's a good question. I'm probably 60-40 on thinking the guy's probably just naive.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. I mean, if you're dumb enough to be the only one who didn't vote for that, I mean, especially when like Mitch McConnell voted for it, Chuck Schumer voted for it. Like, are you sure that those people haven't done anything weird in the past? But it is kind of funny. Everyone's been making fun of this guy. I forget his name. It's
Clay Higgins.
Clay Higgins. Yeah, it wasn't Speaker Johnson, which was surprising in my mind. I thought when I saw the vote, it most certainly was going to be the speaker who voted against it in protest, but it wasn't. Interestingly, I guess because, Johnson's kind of a bag that blows around in the wind, right? Where one good gust and you basically have his opinion on the current situation, especially if the president goes one way. This is one of the things that made him a terrible speaker under Biden, was that he basically just gave Biden whatever he wanted to. It's kind of good, though, to see that it depends on how you think of good. The administration said a lot of terrible things, and he's, of course, just backed it. But at least in this situation, the fact is that if the president goes one way, Speaker Johnson's going with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like he has actually a pretty solid reasoning for voting against it.
Yeah, it's the same one they made up for all these things. It's what they were saying, which is that they're going to defend the victims, the victims who are all asking for these names to be released. But I guess the idea that they keep saying is that there's going to be innocent people hurt by the release of the Epstein files because there's stuff in there where it's like, it's not necessarily saying that they're one way or the other.
Couldn't they have amended the bill to as he wanted to, who I named but not permanently implement it?
They shouldn't have amended. They should not amend it, because what that ends up doing, and we're already so worried about this to begin with, is that they're going to use that as an opportunity to basically cover up whatever they want to.
true. Okay, yeah, that makes sense too.
And that's what Massey's been saying, is that he doesn't want them to slow roll it. Marjorie, Rokana, and I really, I guess we should mention Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rokana as well, because I mean, it wasn't just Massey, but Massey really was the spearhead, and he got the others on board. But the three of them really did such great work with it. But the three of them have also, after fighting so hard, all come out and stated that if they slow roll the release of the Epstein files, they're going to get in front of Congress and just read the names out themselves, essentially. So they've really kind of put the president in a bind here, where eventually you're just going to have to give the people what they want. And, you know, he's lowered public trust so much by doing what he's done recently with the whole slow rolling the release thing. And I think this is what it actually was. I mean, it seems like there was not a real plan here, right? And this is why it's been such a political disaster, was that essentially what it seems like to me is Trump got into office saying, rah, 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 we're going to release the Epstein files, sat down, had his people open up the Epstein files, saw the Epstein file, because he didn't really know what it even was, because I mean, Trump, do you think he actually knew what the Epstein file, I mean, he knew what was going on was Epstein, but he didn't know, like, the intricate details or anything. He opens it up, see the connections between Mossad and intelligence, and it's like, we can't release the Epstein files, this is just a Democrat hoax. So, you know, it's like the definition of, like, he got blasted back by the book, and now is like stunned and saying, "Oh, well, we can't release that. That's just too terrible." So,
Real.
and so I think that's clearly the pattern of behavior here. It doesn't, and that's what I've been saying for a while now. If you know me, is that I can't see a situation where Trump is. I mean, he could be dumb sometimes, but I don't think he's so stupid that if he had been doing really, really heinous illegal shit with Epstein,
I don't think so.
he would say, we're going to release this and run on releasing it, when there was no incentive for him to actually release it because A, to get caught, duh. But Biden had already swept this thing under the rug. Like, this was already an over story. The previous administration, and this is why Democrats try and claim the win here, is so preposterous, is that they covered this up for 4 years already. There was no reason for Trump to, like, reawaken this whole situation, except for, you know, again, if he opened it, realized there was a lot of people that were his supporters in connection to, like, the Israelis, and you're the most pro-Israeli president in American history, and then you see that they're all over the file, and you're like, well, we just can't release that. It's too damaging to national security, and that's what they keep saying.
Why is that? That's the question for Trump. Why is it so dangerous for national security?
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? What's so dangerous for national security? And
Yeah.
I think the reason it's dangerous is because it's going to be revealing, and it's going to reveal the character of an already unpopular ally, and I think it's just more fuel on the fire. And you know, now that it's like getting even more so confirmed that the conspiracy theorists were right once again, right? Putting this genie back in the bottle just seems impossible. So we're at a point kind of here where they have voted for the release, but we don't know what Pam Bondi is actually going to release. I guess we'll continue to see where this is go, but it's just kind of crazy what's already come out and what's all coming together here.
Yeah, and we'll cover it here. Do a live covering as they release the files and then read that.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we'll get everything set up to do a live episode once the files drop. Also, one thing that we discussed last time, and this is kind of going into the Israeli connection, I would like to apologize to Keller. He covered this story last week, and oh my god. It's one of those things where you literally just can't believe it's real. But he showed the sources. There's a Times of Israel article, I believe a New York Post article, both confirming at least that the story of this girl getting the Israeli girl getting the rhinoplasty to basically because they made fun of her nose when she was kidnapped by Hamas because and they wouldn't rape her. Um, that's actually a story. so I'm sorry, Keller. I have the egg on my face. It's an interesting story because it's like the Hamas leadership claims it, and it seems like her therapist also suggested that she should do that. But the Israeli government's kind of trying to act like that's not true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just
there's egg on your face and crow on your plate.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just
and the conspiracy theorists are right.
Yeah, the conspiracy theorists. All right. Oh man, I should just know to stop doubting this kind of shit. I mean, it's just getting so insane. I'm thinking, I really thought like that when I saw that the first time, like just on Twitter, that had to be like a meme. But no, here we are. We live in 2025. Men think they're women think they're men, and an Israeli girl got a rhinoplasty because her nose was too big and Hamas wouldn't rape her when they kidnapped her. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. I mean, what could they say? But
not much. Other than the fact that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, Helzer.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes back into the Epstein stuff and the ceasefire and everything, and it does almost seem like do they know no shame? This whole regime, this whole state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just got so out of hand. And when the Israeli government, uses our taxpayer funds to pay for their abortions, you really just got to ask, at what point do we say, Israel, we understand and we support your mission to defend your people's rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but we cannot continue to support your war efforts. We cannot continue to have this situation where you just blatantly spy on us and use pedophiles to gain national security secrets against us and then sell them to the Russians. Like, we just can't keep doing that, and this idea that we can perpetuate that is preposterous. But I guess one last question for you, Keller, on this topic would be, do you think the president's playing 4D chess? Or what do you think is going on with that? Do you think there's any situation where this was what he intended to begin with?
Well, if I was a follower of Q, yes, he's absolutely playing 4D chess. Trust the plan, and it'll all be revealed in the end. As a rational person, I don't think he knows what's going on. And I think he's just kind of playing everything by ear at this point.
Yeah,
I think he's just playing everything by ear, and kind of like winging it. At this point, I don't think he has a plan. He might have concepts of a plan. I don't think he has a plan.
Yeah, he definitely has the concepts of a plan. People make fun of him for saying that in the past. But I do think, there are so many times before I come up with a plan. I also have concepts of a plan. But most certainly, I would tend to agree. Just the fact that this got so mismanaged. I just don't see how you could say that it was planned or anything like that. I mean, the only thing that'd be in my mind if he wanted to basically keep good faith with his donors, right? Like, if he wanted to keep good faith with Netanyahu and the Israelis and all of those, but he wanted to counter signal, like, essentially the release of the files or whatever, that is the only situation where I could see how that makes sense. But there's no evidence of that. The administration was very, very opposed to Massie. They really attacked him. They attacked his character even on the days leading up to this. And also Marjorie as well, making her an open enemy or whatever, and so far and so forth. It's just really hard for me to see how this was the plan. But they're going to claim that if this ends up improving their numbers, they will claim this is the plan. you have to wonder if Trump is going to continue his attacks on Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene now that he has basically also eaten crow and had to completely change his position on the policy. But it's just really an interesting situation. I guess we just probably got to wait and see what comes next.
I think so. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are turning against Massie. Um, I don't know why. Besides like hive mind stuff, with being a Trump loyalist, I don't know if it's because of what was going on in Washington D.C. with the crime stuff, but it's really weird how people are turning on Massie. He's probably been the most consistent politician who's done probably a lot of good for the United States as a representative from Kentucky. He's a member or a senator, right?
He's in Congress. He's a member of the House.
Member of the House. Okay, so he's a rep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy how we're all just turning on him just because Trump turns on him.
Well, you say that, and I would want to know where you're seeing him get turned on. I have seen the Trump loyalists really turn on him, but you get in these new looks in Politico, where like a lot of people on the left are starting to really like him because, and the same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, where they kind of see him as the alternative, like an alternative to the current Republicans, which is obviously, and he was the one that got the Epstein files passed, and because now they believe that's a good thing, now they like him. But it's kind of like a convergence, right? Because at the same time, the Republicans, his own base, all supported this. And it's widely popular with his own base. It actually tanked his number with his own base. I think him getting it passed, you have to think that's going to make him more popular with Trump's own base, even if the president tries to go against him. I feel like so much of the anti-Massie rhetoric is largely artificial. I think a lot of it is like, what the Adelsons want, because the Adelsons, while working to support progressive Democrats, even though they claim to be conservatives, are working to unseat our one and only good member of Congress and Thomas Massie. That is all you need to know about them. But it's just like, I think that there's a lot of Washington pressure on Massie, but in terms of the popular support, in terms of people, I think his name is not only becoming more popular, he already has, if you look at his polls historically, he has a very, very high approval rating amongst people who actually know him, but it's getting his name out there. So that's the real big kicker here, is if he continues to get his name out there, it essentially makes it so that number of people who know him snowballs and becomes bigger and bigger. And so if he can continue the trajectory he's already had with his approval ratings, you would think that it would make him a nationwide candidate.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, politically, there's a lot of people after him, and I think some of the people that I know that are in with the in crowd in terms of at Washington D.C., I think there's something going on. It's a hunch. We're not gonna call it right now. It's a hunch, a theory. But I think a lot of the young professionals in politics that are going into politics are they're gonna be anti-Massie. We'll have to see.
I'd be really interesting to see what that's going to be. Most of the young professionals I know tend to like him. Now, my question would be, essentially, how can Massie shift young men, in particular amongst the base, away from this weird Fuentes-esque American first, where it's like, American first, but we don't actually care about any values that made America. So like, we don't American first, but we hate free markets, liberty, and people's individual rights. Yeah. So it's like, oh, we also hate Protestantism too, which I know you're Catholic, but there's just no understanding of what this nation that we call America even is. So how can you be America first if that's the case? But I see Tucker interview Nikki Haley's son, and the main thing I think that you would be able to attack Massie on, right, would be the economy. But he's right on the economy, and that's the problem, is that they're going to attack him, I guess, on him, like not supporting their populist policies enough. But again, it's right.
I think that's what it boils down to. I think with people, even Fuentes adjacent, people who like him from a distance but wouldn't like necessarily affiliate themselves with the AF movement, are more interventionists and anti-free market.
Yeah,
and so they're not liking Massie because he's a principled, liberty-minded person. And I think the people, I don't, maybe your group of young professionals is a little different, but the people that I know that are in Washington do not like Massie, and that might grow, possibly. It's a theory. I could be 100% wrong, but I wasn't wrong before about the woman, so I don't know. I might be onto something here, but I guess we'll just have to see. But I think in essence, I think there's just going to be a further divide between the status and anti-status on the right.
It does seem like there's already fractures that are existing between the, like, we've basically, in some ways, argumentatively already discounted the neocons. Like, the neocons still hold large powers in Trump's administration. They still have the Rubio ties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the discourse, in terms of the people, that perspective is basically eliminated. What you're really having now is the argument between your, like, libertarians and your populist. And I think people like Tucker Carlson, even though I like Tucker Carlson, they need to be called out on that. Their economics is terrible. And they continue to push this idea of, like, we don't live under a real free market, but then their answer seems to be populism. And it's not like the market's not regulated. I mean, all these people would talk about, well, Roosevelt came in and busted the trust. When do we stop doing that? We didn't. The answer is that these laws were always, from the beginning, made in order to make certain people rich. And until we remove the laws that make certain people rich, the government is going to continue to use those laws to make certain people rich. And denying that is a denial of reality. The only way we can actually move outside of this weird interventionist system where war criminals make millions is by ending the warfare welfare state. It's so obvious, and it's so amazing because they want to attach these slogans that they make, like, oh, why do Republicans only want to conserve GDP? Us and Massie don't even believe GDP is real, guys. We're way ahead of you on that. If you don't support that kind of candidate, though, you're just not supporting America first. If you can look me in the eye and tell me that after releasing the Epstein files, after all of this, that he is not the most America first person that's going to be a political force in America to come, point to who's better. I mean, really, point to who's better. That's what I would challenge him to do, is who's better. It's the same thing with Ron Paul. What, you're going to not vote for Ron Paul because of, like, you don't like his stance on the economy? Point to who's better and who's going to be better. And the reality is that at the end of the day, these populists think that they're more important than they are. And I think that's the real sad reality here, is that they're going to admire people like Zoran Mondani when the obvious candidate before them is right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it just be like that.
Yeah.
That's why we need you in Washington, D.C.
That's why I'm here. That's why we're getting things done. We're getting things started. We're getting the podcast going. Because big see the change, we need to have some real common sense people around in government I'm not someone who believes that government structures can be fixed, but I do believe that as far as they exist, they should, in some ways, be bent.
The dangers ought to be mitigated.
Yeah, the danger ought to be mitigated, but obviously the answer is always to repeal it. And so really, it's just sad to see. It is sad to see people that you would hope would understand this, but people are so economically illiterate. It's kind of astounding. Speaking of the economic illiterate and this rise in socialism amongst both the left and the right, which is, again, incredibly concerning and shows a complete lack of wherewithal for where the problems lie. Zoran Mamdani went to the White House. Do you have any words on that, Keller?
It's a little interesting. I guess Trump just has a heart for people from New York, no matter how terrible they are with their politics. Yeah.
I mean, pretty much he went in there and, like, Zoran, I guess they had a good conversation, which again, shows that this kind of populism on the right is not actually as far away from a lot of the socialists as we would like to believe. And so they discussed, I don't even know what they discussed, but Mamdani at the end of it was interviewed, and they asked him about when he called him a despot, whether his views changed, etc. He basically was like, "Oh, I think this is going to be a working relationship, etc., etc., etc." Political legalese, and so on and so forth. Trump, was like, "Oh, I've been called much worse," and so on. But my thought is essentially, how is the Democratic left going to react to Zoran doing this? I wonder, is he trying to court the president? What's going on here? He's the new mayor of one of America's largest cities. Trump seems kind of friendly with him. You gotta wonder, at what point is Zoran, going to essentially betray his base? And I think that's one of the great hopes for us coming up in the next 2 years, is that Zoran, AOC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they're not going to be allies ever. I mean, no matter what Fuentes wants or whatever any of these people say, they're not going to be allies with the right. They're not. I mean, these are the same people that would, they are the ones who first and foremost advocated for people to be shut off the internet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These people are not your friend, and they're going to take these massive increased state apparatuses to betray you, essentially. So I just wonder how long it's going to be until Zoran betrays his base. I also saw something about him in an interview talking about making the free buses, and the mayor denied the tax increase that would be required to get these free buses, and Zoran just basically, like a broken record, is like, no, we're going to get the tax increase. We still are going to work with the governor to get the tax increase, get the tax increase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, they can't get the increase. They can't get the money, and the governor's already denied it, so he's just talking out his ass.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's just weird how polite they are to each other, especially after, all the things Mamdani has said about Trump, that is. And he goes to the White House and Trump confirms it. You saw that? You saw when the reporters were fielding questions, and I think either asking if they were affirming that he still thinks that Trump is a fascist.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. He said, he called him a despot, but that's not the worst thing he's ever been called. He basically accepts the definition or whatever. Right? He's called me a despot, but frankly, I've been called much worse. I think we're gonna have a good working relationship, and he might change his mind on me. That's
he will.
what he said.
He will when he wants federal money. He will definitely change his tune.
Well, this is what happens with all these people. It's the same thing as like when AOC was the darling young radical, and then she gets into power, and then she basically is just a shill for the Biden administration. Anybody who thinks that these socialist policies, including Fuentes and the right, Tucker Carlson, etc., who believe that any level of socialism is acceptable, they don't understand, I guess, that these tools will most certainly be used against the right. That's why, again, the only way to really answer these questions is not to take the Ben Shapiro or the Carlson route, and is to go down the classic Ron Paul route of we must end the Federal Reserve, we must end the state expansion of credit, of inflation, etc., and really return to a market-based economy, a real free market, the thing that this country was built on. And it's so amazing how these people claim to love America and claim to love our values, but they know nothing. They know nothing about our values, and it continues to show over and over again.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna it's not gonna it's not gonna let up until we get more of our guys in there. That's just gonna happen.
Speaking of economic woes, I guess we should move to the jobs report. I sent you that article earlier, but the news is not great. It's not the worst ever, but largely it's been seen as a failure. The stock market has reacted pretty negatively to the jobs report. Unemployment has grown. Overall, new job seekers have had a really hard time finding new jobs. People are not hiring, and they're also not firing. So in some ways, because they are still bringing some new people on, but there's not a lot of new jobs, there has been an increase somewhat in employment growth, but it really doesn't matter. The labor market just looks terrible. And now the stock markets are showing it. This is after they kind of experienced a little bit of a boom previously over the government shutdown because the jobs numbers were delayed, and everyone's been anticipating this report. But it really complicates the narrative. A lot of this seems to be the result of tariffs, unsurprisingly, and going back to the stupid socialist policies that these people are advocating for, including our current administration. I mean, people forget the president, largely has endorsed a lot of these government control policies that we keep fighting against. But here, it seems that we have seen that the tariff policies are causing damages to the American economy. Trump is talking about releasing these checks, which, they're going to be printing the money. They're saying it's going to come from the tariffs, but we all know it's going to be inflationary. Coming next year to try to promote the tariff policy, but largely, and we even see with negotiations with China, the fact that he's mostly paused the tariff, while he's been negotiating with China, trying to get this big new deal, that the tariffs have just been awful for the economy. And no matter how much the administration tries to advocate or posture that that's not the case, it just continues to fail.
I'm also going back to the article, there's a chart here that shows all the jobs that gained in September were government, quasi-government, or government subsidized jobs.
Yeah.
Government construction, financial activities, private education, health services, leisure, and hospitality.
Yeah.
So, but both of it's government. Oh.
Yep. Meanwhile, manufacturing, professional and business services, mining and logging, etc., all down. And that's actually a really good point that I hadn't noticed, Keller. I can't believe the little economist in me didn't see that. But this is the same thing the Biden administration did, where they would continuously release these these new job reports that were supposed to show increases, but all the increases are in state industries, aka the federal government is propping up the economy. And this is what we've seen in most of the data regarding the evidence. If you remove AI from the calculation of GDP growth this year, I mean, essentially the GDP growth of the United States has been 0, is what it seems like. About nothing has changed economically in terms of production. And I'm really glad you pointed that out, because that is a fascinating statistic. It's all government-related fields, largely. It is all government-related fields, except for leisure and hospitality, aka they want you to be the Starbucks barista. That seems to be something that continues to grow. But in terms of jobs that are going to get young people employed, try to fix this economy, and really give people chances at getting moving forward, none of that exists. And if you're somebody who is a American working right now, I just don't see how you, especially if you're coming out of university, kind of in my position, I just don't see where you think that there's any hope going forward, at least as long as housing is not dramatically changed with these kind of job numbers. So it's just terrible. But this goes into why people think that there needs to be some sort of intervention, why we need to stop focusing on GDP growth. Their assumption is, of course, that economic growth degrades the society. And I mean, in some ways they're right, in some ways they're wrong. So they're right in the sense that we live under a system currently where the government spending does degrade the society, but that's not because of economic growth and capitalism broadly. It's because of the business cycle, where the government spurs a bunch of artificial growth during the boom period by lowering interest rates, printing all this free money, giving it out to the people that are in their circles. They spike the growth beyond natural levels in the boom period, but because they're spiking the growth beyond natural levels, all the investments that are beyond natural levels are essentially fake investments. In the natural economy, they would not be made, so therefore, the money is essentially being wasted. And some might be more successful. I mean, there can of course be success stories that emerge from that, and therefore, because even though the bank would not have trusted them with the loan to begin with, they create a lot more growth than they otherwise would. That's largely how the administration is hoping AI will be viewed in the long term, but I just don't see that. But that's kind of the assumption. And the reason that degrades is because you waste all the money and you make society worse and worse by essentially investing money that would otherwise be saved for natural growth into unnatural growth that ends up being eventually liquidated, and everything that was used for, all the resources, are lost. And because you can't plan for the future, you don't know what resources are going to go in, you lose your beautiful architecture, you lose your religion, you lose your social standing, you lose your morality, as people, business cycle after business cycle, continue to be essentially worn down just by the constant cycle of boom and bust. And it's just sad because they're reacting to a real problem. A lot of these people on the America First wing, it's the same thing as the socialists. They're often reacting to a real problem. But if you can't see that the answer has to lie outside the state after they have created the exact situation that we're under now, and you can even see it just in the basic architecture. Like, when you go out to like a city like Detroit, and I've been to Detroit, and you go to see like the beautiful Art Deco buildings, every single one of them is built basically maybe 10 years after the, I mean, even shorter than that, largely. around the same time as the creation of the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve largely has a lot of influence on the creation of skyscrapers. But the reason skyscrapers get uglier is because it's like every single cycle of the business cycle, things just get uglier and uglier and uglier. And in some ways, yes, GDP caring only about GDP growth plays a role in that. But if not that this is a market without regulation, just that there's too many regulations, and GDP itself is a state construct. And as long as we continue to rely on state constructs as arbiters of the overall health of the market and stability of the economy, it's not going to matter whether you give it this artificial veneer of America first. You're going to continue to degrade your society. And then because you endorse these socialist policies, socialism is going to be associated with you. And whatever happens after that, like in terms of politics, who even knows? I mean, it's just going to make, I think, fertile breeding grounds for the leftists to finally reassert themselves.
Yeah, I really wanted to write on this about the huge connections between how printing money destroys a culture and a society. I've tried to defend this point in basic oral arguments, and the guys don't get it.
You need to, you know who's really good on this? Have you ever read Horta de Soto?
I don't think I've read him yet.
You should. Which one is it? I think it's Money, Banking, and Bank Credit and Economic Cycles.
The huge tome of a book that will take years or
you don't need to read all of it. There's certain chapters though that you could read. Let you know the chapters are still like 200 pages, but you can get it mostly summarized just by kind of reading through it. I think it's chapter 5 and chapter 8 are really good on this kind of thing and the degradation of society. Obviously, democracy talks about it with the interest rate theories. If you don't know the book, please go read. And this is just assigned reading for anybody who listens to this podcast. Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe. If you don't read Democracy by Hans, you have really no right to call yourself a right-winger. I think that, obviously, you gotta read it for what it is, and maybe you should read some more, like, Rothbard theory before you really dive into democracy, but you have to read Democracy, and you have to understand what it is. It's just essentially how interest rates have been utilized to destroy our society. And people think that these things are they're just nothing. They're just the boring issues, but all the boring issues are where all the real power lies. And, politics used to be considered boring, essentially, well, largely. And now there's issues that are popular issues, essentially. But they wanted to keep, power always wants to keep politics boring, because if politics is boring, people ignore it. And the reality is that as things have gotten interesting, politicians have had to defend themselves more, thinking that the economy and the economic structures aren't largely the same way. It's just naive.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That's another thing that, like, both, I don't know, I guess, who's the big leftist? I guess still the Squad.
Yeah, ASE and Zoran, the four horsemen of the apocalypse: Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mamdani.
Yeah, the popular progressives want to focus on the silly, social justice.
Yeah.
And then you have your Fuentes guys that will also actually technically they're also focusing on social justice.
They're literally focusing on the same thing, but on different sides.
But what they don't realize is that those things are just, I don't know how many times I feel like I'm repeating myself, every time I say this, but these social issues, maybe because I have to every time I talk about it with Mr. Hurd,
Yeah.
I have to repeat myself. I find myself repeating it a lot. But every all the social issues that we have, I said this when I was debating at the our last great debate on my college campus
Yeah.
with between the college Republicans, college Democrats, and the Mises Society.
Yep.
And I kept saying this. I kept pulling this, hammering this point home, is that we can sit here and talk about whether or not Trump's or Elon Musk is being a king and acting like this and that, and talk about social issues and everything. It's like, but people can't afford stuff.
Yeah.
And men are not dating. Men are not finding they're dating to get married and have children and have a house because they realize they can't afford these things,
Yeah.
and there's no point. So they're driven to the vodka, America's vodka, which is like pornography and drugs. We're not drinking as much anymore. We're moving towards
It's a
all the other
society. I'll say, even as someone who is myself a bit of a pothead. Oh yeah,
The weird way that this generation has replaced alcohol with marijuana is quite interesting.
Exactly, but these are all escapism methods, like I said with the free vodka,
And this
because
is
we're not.
always.
Yeah,
It's the same thing as it's not sorry to interrupt, but like even with the marijuana issue, um, so much of this is economically related. People talk about how they want to end drug usage. Why are so many people smoking? It's just because men are weaker nowadays, or they. No, it's escapism, exactly as you were saying.
yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing they did in the Soviet Union towards the end when the economy was failing. It's a large sign, a sign of a falling regime. And this was the same with the Romans. Licentiousness increases towards the end of an empire. Essentially, the social boundaries have all been pressed. Nobody has a long-term outlook. Everybody only is focusing on tomorrow. So it's like, whether I smoke some pot or whether I do fentanyl or anything, all these
It really goes beyond even just drug use. We're talking about, like, it's easier for me to pay $5.99 a month and let some girl talk ASMR, bullshit on OnlyFans, than having to like spend $200 on a date, or having to make enough money because the women are the high tide preference themselves and realizing they can't make it on themselves, so they have to rely. They raise their standards and they want a man who can makes like seven. I guess now we have to talk about like eight figures. It used to be six figures. Now we got to like be a multi-millionaire. In your salary.
and not just that. I think obviously it would be hard to say that the rise of stuff like LGBTQ and so on and so forth also don't reflect the same effects. I mean, essentially, like,
yeah, you can't date women anymore. Maybe if like bro becomes a woman, then we can like just date.
yeah, like literally, and the fact that you're not going to have a family or a house anyways,
it matter.
it matters, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the difference is between an ass and a vagina at that point. I mean, to be crude about it, but that's the reality for a large majority of people. I mean, I think you even see that in like the guy that tried to shoot Trump and the guy that did shoot Charlie Kirk. I mean, like, weren't they both like weird fetishists that were into trans stuff and furries?
Yeah, his boyfriend, Charlie Kirk shooter, was like his boyfriend was trans and also like a furry. I can't, don't quote me on that one because I'm actually not really sure. I'll have to do the research and prove you wrong.
And I mean, this is not a one-off phenomenon. That kind of idea, the whole admiration for the quote-unquote femboy, even, it all stems from
German.
the same stuff. Yeah, it also even in the Weimar, the reason that it was all happening, and this is why it's so true, like what we're saying here, it was because of the economic decline. Why do you think the Qing dynasty,
It's funny. People would joke now about the American century of humiliation. Why did the Qing dynasty collapse that led to the Chinese century of humiliation? It was because the economy. They closed out the market. They basically reached their high point, their pinnacle of their economy, and then shut out the entirety of the rest of the outside world. Well, what ended up happening was that the Qing economy did not develop for years because they did that, and the rest of the world caught up to them. So they were no longer in the economic position that they had been in the past. They couldn't maintain it. And what happened was they had an opium crisis. Now we have an opium crisis because we have literally ruled our government in a similar way to the Qing dynasty. So, and meanwhile, China, despite the bridges collapses, they have a rapid GDP growth, and they buy all of our things from us. It used to be 100 years ago that they bought our things, and they had the opium crisis. But and even going back to the Fuentes debate, they're the ones who are trying to become more capitalist, it seems, as well. It's us that continues to try to embrace these failed socialist policies. So
Yeah, they're switching it up.
yeah, everything's topsy-turvy. President Z is more of what Trump claims to be than Trump is. It seems to be at this point. But it's just mind-boggling, and it's hard to overstate just the insanity. But, oh man, we went a little bit long on that point, but I really want to get into this Russia-Ukraine thing.
Sure.
I think that this is one of the most interesting stories right now, because it feels like this is a turning point, more so than even the Epstein stuff is, that this is a real turning point in the conflict, in the war more broadly. Obviously, we kind of mentioned last week, Pokrovsk finally fell, one of Ukraine's westerly cities, and Trump has come to the point where he's proposing this 28-point peace option. And he said he's gotten Russian cooperation on it. Russia seems to be kind of up in the air. While they're somewhat supportive, they're back and forth, they're wishy-washy, and we have no idea, then, like, there's no real understanding that, like, if the Ukrainians are going to accept it or not. And the Ukrainians seem that they're not going to accept it. The Europeans seem that they're not going to accept it. And Putin seems like he may or may not accept it. What this seems to signal to me then, and this is what the bubblings around Washington, D.C. are, is that this is more Trump putting the foot down than an actual peace proposition. He'd even said as much, where he says, and this is in the Reuters article, talking about Zelensky, Trump says he'll have to like it. If he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess. At some point, he's going to have to accept the fact, something that he has not accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said you don't have the cards. AKA, he's basically laying out to Zelensky that you're either going to accept this deal or we're leaving. We're done. And the Europeans are giving him this false sense of hope on the other hand. And Zelensky's response to Trump's deal essentially was that he's put between a position of maintaining dignity or losing a key partner. All of this, of course, and I think this plays a big role in why this is happening at all, is because Zelensky, one of his top officials, essentially, my understanding was it was like one of his like vice presidents, a major figure in the Zelensky government, was caught in a $100 million corruption scandal of embezzlement from the energy sector. And this is especially heinous because the energy sector that this money had been embezzled from That money was supposed to go to Ukrainians during the winter, and they had one of their harshest winters ever in recent memory this last year, and through a lot of this war. And so just seeing the Zelensky government take all this money that mostly had come from the West and use it for their own personal means, I think makes it so Western governments, or especially America, is really seeing the game for what it is, and they're just done with it. They're just done with it. And so this leads the interesting position that we're in now, where we just have to see what Zelensky's going to do. I mean, is Zelensky going to take a deal, or is he going to reject Trump's deal and essentially just continue fighting? Putin seems to essentially get a lot of land concessions in this, not a lot. I mean, the border in certain areas like Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, they're not getting the borders all the way they want, but they're getting all of Donetsk. They're keeping Luhansk. And one of the things I thought was especially interesting, that was one of the points in Trump's deal. I mean, obviously, a lot of restricting the Ukrainians from joining NATO is a big part of it as well, but essentially it's just something to get the war to stop. What is interesting, though, is that there's a part of the treaty where the United States says that even though the Ukrainians do not have to recognize it, the United States will officially recognize the concession of Crimea to Russia in this deal.
Yeah, so looking at the Rutgers article, the area, so all what was that, 6?
5 is 5 oblast.
5 oblasts.
Yeah.
So all that goes to Russia?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's where mostly you can see where in the article, and not, I don't know if you want to screen share the article. I can pull it up here. As you can see here in the article, there is essentially, here's the current front line, all in red. This is where the fighting currently is. They just took across around this area over here. And no, maybe it's right here, but either way, this is Donetsk province. This is the land that will be conceded to the Russians that they currently don't occupy. Russia claims all this area as well, but the understanding is that the Russians aren't going to annex the other oblast. But the peace treaty would give them the unoccupied areas of Donetsk and basically meet most of Russia's conditions that they actually started the war over. If the peace treaty is not accepted, my understanding is that America is going to kind of just uphold its end and say, well, we're done. We tried, and then it's going to be up to the Europeans. And we all know that the Europeans are going to be unable to maintain any actual resistance against the Russians. And it feels like, Zelensky's making the same mistake he already did before when he trusted Boris Johnson. Why would you ever trust the Europeans in this situation? And I guess the only reason is because you're corrupt and you're going to go to prison if you don't continue the war.
Real.
I mean, that's largely what it seems to be, is that the reason that he doesn't want to give up power is because they're so corrupt that he's going to get exposed. He's already incredibly unpopular. And the reason he's been able to maintain power is because he suspended elections over and over again. So
yeah. So if Ukraine does not accept this 28-point resolution, we're just going to end up taking all of our help from them, basically.
That's what it seems like. I mean, it's not
wash your hands of it,
but that's what the administration seems to be positing, is that, yeah, this is it. This is where the buck stops. He either accepts the American proposal, this is the peace treaty, or the Americans are they're going to be Pontius Pilate with it. They're going to wash their hands of it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird why we're doing this, which we probably should have done this like what, maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
We should have done this at least. I mean, even in terms of Trump, this should have been his position from the beginning. But I guess he was hoping that he could keep up a face of like trying to do this so they could finally work out this deal and so on and so forth. But the Ukrainians seem to be showing that they don't really want that because of political reasons, corruption reasons, etc. And the Europeans don't want it because they're actually also in a similar position to Zelensky, where you look at Germany, their economy is terrible. You look at France, their economy is terrible. You look at Britain, their economy is terrible. All these places have incredible levels of unpopularity. This new Merz guy in Germany, their current chancellor, he's the most popular out of all of them, and he only has a 25% approval rating. I mean, he won despite not being from the most popular party in the country, and unsurprisingly, he's been kind of a continuation of the previous status quo. So I have a hard time seeing, I mean, it seems like their incentives, the Ukrainians and the Europeans, is just this cynical sense where they want to prolong the war so they can stay in power, so they can continue to be the wartime leaders. And Biden had done this before and done the same thing as the Europeans. But it's just kind of sad to see this whole situation, and sad, especially for the Ukrainians who, are going to be put on the front line and die for this. At this point, it's not even a national defense, and I think most Ukrainians even see it that way. It's more of just a suicide.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Best thing to do is hopefully they'll accept it. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna accept it. I mean, you're conceding 5 oblasts. I don't know about that.
And I mean, the irony is that Russia, I mean, they occupy most of this at this point. So, I mean, it's not like, and they're winning. So it's not, that's the thing as well, is that Ukraine is having massive fatalities. The Russian objective for most of the war has been to essentially destroy the Ukrainian army. They care actually not so much about taking territory as much as they care about just getting rid of the Ukrainian army. It's Clausewitz. I mean, it's classic military doctrine. I mean, this is what the Russians have been doing since before World War One. Is this idea that you get rid of the enemy's capacity to fight, and then you take the land. And it seems like the Russians have essentially done that. Ukraine is on its last legs. They're losing land rapidly. The Ukrainians claim they're not losing much, but the amount has really picked up in the last few months. Last month they lost the most that they had since essentially the beginning of the war, and this month they're projected to lose even more. Up to 1,000 square miles is my understanding, is the prediction, which would be equivalent to the entire Berlin capital state in Germany. So the Russians are continuing to advance. They're speeding up in their advance. And if the Ukrainians don't accept this deal, which it almost seems like they're not going to, I guess we still have to see. There's still time. But if they don't accept it, it seems like it's only a matter of time until their line finally breaks, the Europeans can't support them, and then Russia just gets everything they want. And in some ways, I think that's why Putin's kind of hesitant on the deal, because his hardliners and his government, they don't see much benefit to taking the peace. Putin wants to take the peace because he kind of sees this we want to try to we get most of what we want already. We want to not expand ourselves, trying to occupy all this territory. We don't want a counterinsurgency, and it keeps us at peace with Ukraine and keeps them out of NATO and out of the European Union, etc. But I mean, the hardliners basically see it as we might as well just get this done with. Why don't we just take everything? Why don't we just finish the war? And so that all the Russians are under us, we denazify the government, which has been their big thing for a while, or at least one of their big propaganda tools. It's been this idea of denazification. And it seems like a lot of his hardliners are under the impression that he would be giving in to the West by accepting the deal. So he's kind of hesitant on it too, but at least the Russians seem to be ready and willing to accept this current peace treaty. But it seems like the Ukrainians are almost playing into his hand, or at least the hand of his hardliners, because if the war continues and the Americans are no longer involved, I mean, what are you even doing? I mean, like, it's just a matter of time until the Russians just roll over you.
Just I wonder how the pro Ukraine Hoppians are doing right now.
Oh man, the pro-Ukraine Hoppians, I imagine, I mean, the fact that you would ever support a state on either side of the war, to me, is always ridiculous. But the fact that these people tried to claim that Ukraine was going to win the war, and I remember debating the pro-Ukraine Hoppians, it was just always absolutely ridiculous. It was always absolutely ridiculous. These signs had been there from the beginning. Biden gave them billions in taxpayer money. And it's never a government's job to give people any weapons, even if they're being attacked. And that's just the reality. You can't steal. I mean, if you wanted to give Ukraine money and you actually trusted the Ukrainian government, which was like, why would you ever trust the most corrupt government on earth, or at least the most corrupt government in Europe, with lots and lots of free money? I have no idea, but, you know, I think a lot of that tends to be personal. People had family connections. They wanted to act like they weren't betraying like their families or whatever. But if you had any common sense, you could see this from day one that this was going to be the outcome. And Ukraine, God love them. I mean, they really put up a good fight against the Russians. But this was what Russia was planning on. I think maybe Putin thought that this would have ended faster than it did, but this was always plan B, and they've basically gotten what they wanted.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that's really all that can be even said about that. It's just they've gotten what they've wanted. So unless you have any extra comments on that, that's probably where I'm thinking about wrapping up.
I think that covers it.
Do you have any final comments, Keller, for the audience today?
No, not really. I'm excited to see what happens next week. We'll see what happens with if anything does happen with Ukraine, and we'll definitely curate some more cool content for y'all to talk about next week, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, and I think, last week we had, I feel like, such a good news week, and then they released the Epstein files, and we got this massive story on Ukraine, and it's another great news week. I just really hope we can, in some ways, I want it to slow down because it's going to be over Thanksgiving. We're going to have the Iron Bowl and everything.
Yeah, this is probably our first story is gonna be on
Iron Bowl. Yeah, the Iron
Bowl. We're gonna take a break there.
Do our predictions. We're gonna take our predictions on the Iron Bowl, and what we should do is we should really see about now that I'm moving in Alabama, we got to try to figure out recording one of these in person.
Possibly.
This could be something that could be done. But we'll discuss that. We'll get plans. We'll have an awesome episode for you guys next week. Until then, I guess we just have to continue the eternal struggle for liberty. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back. I guess we record Saturdays, but this video will come up on every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. 7 p.m. Central, and whatever time that is in the rest of Greenwich Mean Time. Thank you again. I love all y'all. Volum vivas, and have a wonderful day. All right, it is
11:32 p.m. on Friday. We have already recorded the show. It's all over. And Marjorie Taylor Greene resigns. Breaking news. We couldn't wait to talk about this. How did we wait a week to talk about something so big in the news cycle? And we haven't even released the episode yet. So, Keller, initial thoughts on Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation.
What does she know? What does she know? I'm thinking we're thinking something happened behind the scenes that made her resign. Because what would be her reasoning? She just helped Massie pass the bill to release the Epstein files, and then 24 hours later, what was it? 24 hours later, roughly, more or less.
It's been a few days. Yeah, it's not
A few days.
been 24 hours because they passed it
Was it with the
Tuesday, Wednesday, so it'd be about
okay?
2-3 days. Yeah, it's a few days.
So less than a week, less than 5 days. We've got her resigning, with no real explanation. I was listening to some of her resignation video, and I briefly skimmed over the letter that she had released.
Yeah, I've been reading the letter too.
It didn't really say anything regarding exactly why, other than the fact that she's like, well, it's the same old, unit party rhetoric, which I completely understand. But then it's like, well, then why are you resigning if you're the difference? Like, why are you gonna leave what could potentially be helpful to fight back against the uniparty?
Yeah, she seems like a lot of it seems like she's trying to say that it's just because she's kind of hopeless with the whole situation. Not to slander her, but I do have on the side here a thing from Michael Malice that's a meme of her. It says Marjorie first. It makes you wonder what's actually going on. I think it's interesting that she mentioned that there's no plan to save the world or any insane 4D chess being played. That goes back to our conversation earlier about the Epstein files. I think any sort of way of trying to lead it out to be anything other than the very obvious, the idea that he ran on it, not knowing what was in it, saw what was in it, and then decided he didn't like it, or he would protect whoever was doing.
He had no plan, and it seems that Marjorie Taylor also thinks so too.
Well, and she thinks she got betrayed by him. And I think a lot of Americans feel the same way. I guess the question is, how is this going to help any of us? But I do think that in a lot of ways, it seems like she's prioritizing herself over the country. But, that's not to say anything. Who knows what's going on? But it's just out of nowhere, and people keep giving her so much credit. But at the end of the day, it goes back to what I've been saying, which is that there's really only one option for America first. And if you reject that one option, you are not America first, which is the one candidate who embodies America's values, who actually wants to defend our civil rights, and when tested time and time again, does so. And that's Thomas.
So true. I was going to say Nicholas Fuentes, but okay.
I'm in the state where when I say Nicholas Fuentes, I literally put his last name in quotation marks.
It's exactly
Nick Fuentes. He's just so questionable. I feel like, that's such a whole side tangent, but if he is the one who leads us down the direction of America first or whatever he wants us to do, then this whole movement means absolutely nothing, because everything he embodies is a contradiction to the principles of America. I mean, we're not even talking about oh, he says bad things about Jews. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's bad. But, the real thing is that, he wants to take over the conservative movement.
towards a direction of authoritarianism and toward a direction of state control that has never been seen in this country. He hides behind this veil of comedy and the fact that he really doesn't have well thought out ideas. And if you go through what his America First means, it's essentially a bunch of things from like that have nothing to do with what made America great to begin with, which would make sense for somebody who is not a heritage American, but that's neither here nor there.
Real.
Back on to Marjorie Taylor Greene, though. It's just really quite surprising. I did not see this coming. I mean, this was a big win for her. I thought she was going to really start. I mean, maybe if she's going to run for something, I could see doing this, but this just seems so out of failure.
Some people positing that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what she'd be running for, though.
But why? How many years she even has as a rep?
They only have 2-year terms, so she probably would be going up for a vote this coming year.
Okay.
What's on the Georgia state election calendar?
Can they not camp?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Can they not campaign while they're at office?
There's no confirmed Republican candidate for Senate.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's what people posit, though. So
yeah, they have. It looks like there's a 2026 Senate election in Georgia. Incumbent John Ossoff has been in there for a while. He's a Democrat. It's kind of crazy that Georgia has 2 Democrat senators. They've been wanting to unseat one for a while. I think they think that this is the year they can do it. That might be what she's trying to do. And there's been rumors of some other electoral stuff like that too.
But then, like, why not finish out your term? Is it like
I don't know. No, it's not a legal thing. So
okay. That's what was confusing.
He declined to run for the position before, is what it says here. So, I don't know. Seems like it's probably a no. I mean, it seems like she's just going away. I mean, it's hard to assume incentives. It really is hard to assume incentives. You just often end up being wrong. I mean, maybe she got cold feet on the whole House thing and decides she wants to change, but the fact that she's resigning seems odd. Typically, if you're going to run from representative to Senate, you just run from representative to Senate.
I mean, that's what Tuberville is doing. He's running for governor of Alabama.
Yeah, Tuberville has done that same maneuver. I mean, everybody does that maneuver. But if you're already in office, you just finish out in office and move over.
Yeah, so it sounds like let's put our tinfoil hats on for a second. It sounds like she's getting blackmailed.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like they're saying they're threatening her, and we know that they've done this in the past. And there's all the rumors about Thomas Massie's wife as well, which if you know, kind of thing. But there is more than enough suspicion to suggest that these people who we know, they killed Kennedy, they killed all these other people, and they're probably willing to threaten. They're probably willing to put up some threats with some real powerful backing. And so
it's the Bank of London. That's what it is.
The Bank of London. Yes.
Our viewers probably would not understand that joke. But
no, they don't understand it. They don't know anything. Everybody knows it's behind the Bank of London.
It's 100% true. It's the dragons, man.
It's the Bank of London and the Bank of London in tandem. But yeah,
that's what it is.
That's what it is. Well, do you have any further comments on the resignation, Keller?
We just gotta see what happens. We'll see as it unfolds. Maybe we'll get some more info, and our next show we can probably talk about it more in depth.
Yeah, and it'll probably go complete and hopefully on what's going on. Well, at least maybe some new updates on what's going on with Russia as well, who knows what the other news is going to break. You know how Trump is. You know how Twitter is. Something new and retarded happens every single fucking day.
Very true. Very true.
So, with that, if we have nothing else, I think it's time to say goodbye. Goodbye.
We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for joining us on this little edition. Sorry for making it to go through the original outro, but either way, thank you all for listening, and I hope you found this insightful. In liberty, keep fighting the great fight. See you guys next time. Bye.